If you're a real estate agent and do not know how to do a CMA properly, you are losing listings you should have won. Not because you're not likable, not because your branding is weak, not because you need a better script, because the second a seller asks, "What do you think my house is worth?" you either sound like a professional or you sound like you're guessing. Here's the truth nobody says out loud. A lot of real estate agents are purely guessing. They just do it with confidence. They pull a few nearby sales, they grab a range, they pick the number the seller seems happiest with, and they hope and pray that the market forgives them. This is not pricing. This is full-fledged gambling with someone else's equity. After 24 years in this business, working with hundreds and hundreds of sellers and selling over 1,000 homes, I can tell you with complete confidence, pricing is one of the most misunderstood skills in real estate, because a CMA is not just pulling comparables. It's not just finding what solds nearby were, and it's definitely not copying what another agent told a seller last month. A real CMA, so a comparative market analysis, is answering one question. What is the market most likely willing to pay for this home in this location and in this condition right now? That's it. And if you can answer this question well, you become dangerous fast. You win more listings, you gain trust faster, you protect sellers from bad pricing, and you stop sounding like a new agent, even if you are one. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I do my comparative market analysis, step by step. Not theory, not textbook fluff, not vague advice. Just look at the comps and use your judgment. I'm going to show you the actual process I use, how to think about the home, how to choose the right comps, how to avoid the traps newer agents or even seasoned agents fall into, how to build a pricing range, and how to present the range to your seller appropriately. This is how you can win listings instead of just showing up with paperwork. Because if you get the skill right, everything changes. Let's get into it. Let's start right here, because this is where newer agents and even seasoned agents get off track. See, a CMA is not your opinion. It's not your vibe. It's not what the seller wants to hear. It's not what Zillow says. It's not whatever number helps you get the listing. It's a CMA, a comparative market analysis. That means your job is to study the market and answer 4 questions. What are buyers comparing this home to? What has the market already proven? What is the current competition? And where does this property fit inside all of that? That's it. That's the game. And the reason this matters the most is because agents, both seasoned and newer agents, often think the goal is to show up with a magic number. It's not magic. The goal is to build a defendable case. That is a completely different mindset. You're not trying to be impressive. You are trying to be accurate. And that shift is massive, because when you understand that, you stop asking, what number should I say? And you start asking, what does the evidence support? And that's how real pricing works. That is how appraisers think. That is how experienced listing agents think. And that is how you need to think if you want sellers to trust you. In my experience, one of the fastest ways for a seller to lose confidence in an agent is not the agent was rude. It's not the agent was new. It was that the agent had a number with no backup, no case, no support. They could not explain it clearly. They could not defend the logic, and they could not connect the number to the market. And sellers can feel that, especially smart sellers, especially analytical sellers, and people who have already been watching the market for months. From this point forward, I want you to think of it like this. A CMA is an evidence-based positioning. That one line can clean up your whole process. Here's the rookie mistake. They go straight into MLS. They run a search, they pull a few solds, and they think the job is almost done. It's not. That is like trying to price a used car by looking at 3 or 4 Facebook Marketplace ads and ignoring the mileage, the trim level, the conditions, the upgrades, the accident history, and whether the car actually runs. You're missing the whole point. A good CMA is not about proximity. It's about comparability. And those are not the same things. Just because a home sold nearby doesn't make it a good comp. Just because it has the same number of bedrooms doesn't make it the right comparable. Just because it has the same postal code or zip code does not mean buyers see it as a substitute. The market does not price sort of similarity. The market prices alternatives. This is a huge difference. And if you're new, this is where you need to get disciplined fast, because once you understand that buyers are not comparing categories, they're comparing substitutes, your pricing gets better. So my 7-step process. So here's the exact framework I want you to use every single time. This is what I'm doing. Yesterday, I was on a CMA. This afternoon, 3 o'clock, I'm going on a CMA. I use a 7-step process even right now in my business. 24 years of doing this, still I use it this way. So number 1, understand the subject property. Number 2, define the micro market. Number 3, pull active, conditional, and sold comps. Number 4, eliminate bad comparables. Number 5, compare the value drivers. Number 6, build a pricing range. And number 7, turn the range into a strategy. That's it. Simple framework. If that's all you need, thanks for watching. But if you actually want to know how to implement, stay in because I'm going to unpack it right now. Step number 1, know the subject property cold. Before you run comps, you need to know exactly what you're pricing. I mean exactly, not vaguely. Not, oh, it's a 3-bedroom detached home in this part. No, not, it's a condo downtown. That's not enough. You need to understand the product, because in real life, buyers are not comparing homes based upon basic MLS categories. They're comparing on feel, function, condition, utility. So before anything, I want you to gather all of the facts about the property. What is the property type? Detached, semi-detached, townhome, condo, stacked, bungalow, side split, whatever it is. How many bedrooms? How many bathrooms? How much above grade square footage? Is the basement finished? Is there a garage? 1 car, 2 car, 3 car, none? What's the lot like? How old is the home? How many upgrades have been done in the last 0 to 5 years? What's the actual condition of the home? Are there any functional issues? Any weird or strange problems? Any obvious location drawbacks? If it's a condominium, what building is it in? What are the fees? What does that include? How many parking spaces are there? Is there a locker? What is the reputation of the building? What is the reserve fund like? Are they upside down financially? Are there going to be special assessments? You need all of that, because a 1990s detached home with original finishes is not the same product as a renovated detached home with the same square footage. A condo with parking and low fees is not the same as a condo without parking or bloated fees. Like in my marketplace, a condominium with parking and a condo without parking, that's at least a $50,000 swing. If you don't know that, you're out of touch by at least 50 grand without even doing any adjustment. A townhome backing onto a quiet ravine is not the same as backing on a noisy, busy main artery. And after 24 years of doing this, I can tell you, seasoned agents and newer agents often underweigh how much of these differences matter. They look at the obvious things: bedrooms, bathrooms, an area. But buyers do not stop there. Buyers walk in and instantly start reacting to layout, updates, light, noise, lot quality, and how much work the home needs. That reaction affects value. So before you price anything, understand the home like a buyer would. In plain English, you should be able to describe it like, this is a 3-bedroom home, 2-bathroom detached bungalow with roughly 1,300 square feet above grade, finished basement, updated kitchen, older bathroom, single car garage, and strong appeal for downsizers or small family. That tells me you understand the product. And if you do not understand the product, you're not ready to price it. All right, step number 2, define the real market, not a lazy radius. Now, let's talk location. This is where a lot of CMAs fall apart, because newer agents love the lazy radius search. They draw a circle around the property, pull within a mile or 2 or kilometer, and act like that's it. That's the market. Well, it's not. Markets are not shaped like circles. They are shaped by roads, school zones, transit access, lot types, housing age, neighborhood identity, building reputation, walkability, noise, and buyer perception. In my career, I have seen homes a few streets apart trade very differently because one side of the area feels clearly superior. Better streets, better lot quality, better school perception, less traffic, stronger buyer demand. That is real. And if you ignore that, your CMA gets worse immediately. So ask yourself, where would buyers genuinely look instead of this home? Not what is nearby, what is interchangeable? That's the question. Sometimes This is one subdivision to another. Sometimes it's the cluster of nearby streets. Sometimes it's one specific condo building, not the building next door. Sometimes you need to widen the geography because the home is more unique and inventory is thin. That is judgment. And that is why pricing is not just data entry, it's market interpretation. And that is also why 3 excellent comps are better than 10 lazy ones. Do not confuse quantity with quality. I would rather see a new agent bring 4 sharing comps and a strong explanation than 20 random sales in the general area. Step number 3, pull the 3 buckets that matter. Now that you know the subject and the real market, you pull 3 buckets: active listings, conditional or pending, if your board shows that visibility, and the third and final is sold listings. Each one tells something different. And if you ignore one of these buckets, you are missing part of the story. See, active listings, this is where sellers are competing. This is what buyers can choose instead of your property that's on the market. That means a lot. One of the biggest pricing mistakes agents make is getting obsessed with solds by ignoring the current market inventory. But buyers shop what's available now. So if your subject home is hitting the market this week, it is not just competing with a sale from 60 days ago. It's competing with what buyers can see right now this afternoon. So you have to look closely at the actives. I preview all properties that are on the market for any subject property that I have, because real estate sells real estate. People are going through your subject listing and the other 3 or 4 on the market and make a decision on what's best. Do you actually know what the comps look like? Do you want your property to sell other property, or do you want other property to sell your property? It's imperative you know what the competition is, because if your listing is weaker than the other homes on the market, you're just going to be sold. People are going to use your home and, as I say, buy the other property. This is not strategy. This is denial if you're not actually looking at it. Second segment on this is conditional or pending sales. This tells you what buyers are saying right now in the market. This is gold because sold data lags. Conditional is fresh data. It's fresh market activity. This shows you what is currently being absorbed in the market. If a similar home went conditional in 5 days, this tells you that demand exists at that level. If another sat for 35 days before going conditional, that tells you something else. So this is where you start to feel the market, not just read it. Last, sold listings. This tells you what the market has already proven. This is the anchor. This is the benchmark, as I call it. This is when consideration have moved from a buyer to a seller. See, a competition home, a property is on the market, they can list at anything. And most property in any given market is overpriced. But benchmark is what we need to look after as an actual true value of what is sold. This is where you get the strongest evidence of what buyers have actually paid. Usually, I want my recent solds first. That's what I talk about at the beginning with my clients. And if the market has shifted, I weigh the most recent evidence heavily. So whenever I'm doing my CMA, I go back, 6, 12 months. But whenever I'm presenting it, I always talk about the most recent sale first, and then the further out we go, because you have to make an adjustment for time value of money. Your money today is different than it was worth 12 months ago, right? So make sure you present it in the fashion of most recent sale at the beginning. Again, this is where experience starts to matter the most. Not because you need 24 years of experience like I do doing CMAs, but because over time, you get better at sensing whether older sales are still relevant or already stale. All right, step number 4, filter aggressively. This is where the real work starts, because now you're not just pulling data, you're editing it. And this is where newer agents and even seasoned agents usually get quite passive. They think, well, every nearby sale belongs in the conversation. It's not. Some comps need to die fast and get removed from your CMA. You want to eliminate anything that is clearly not part of the same pricing conversation. Too different in size, too different in layout, too different in condition, too different in lot quality, too different in location, too different in buyer appeal. A detached home with a premium renovation package and a dream backyard should not be weighed the same as a tired version on a worse street. A condo with panoramic views, 2 parking spaces, and renovated interior is not the same product as a lower level unit with average finishes and 1 parking. This is where lazy CMAs get dangerous, because when you leave bad comps in, they distort the range. They make it more confusing. You have your seller all over the place. Your job as a realtor is to make it clear and easy for your client to understand. You're paid to interpret the market. And this is where agents mess it up all the time. They're lazy. They don't actually dive in to the specific comparables and align them with the subject property and remove all of the clutter. I would ask, would a real buyer seriously compare that property to the subject property? If the answer is no, cut it, remove it. That question alone will improve your pricing overnight. Step number 5, look at what actually drives value. Now we get into the real comparison phase. And this is where you need to stop thinking like MLS and start thinking like a buyer, because buyers do not walk into a home and think, interesting, this property has 2.5 baths versus the comp at 2 baths. No, they react emotionally and practically. They notice what feels better, what looks expensive, what feels easy, what will actually work. So when you compare the subject property to the comps, here's what matters the most. Location inside the area, not just the neighborhood. Micro-location, busy road or quiet street, backing onto traffic or backing onto trees, near school, near commercial, better side of the street, inferior lot. Buyers care. Layout. This one matters more than most agents realize. 2 homes can have identical square footage and feel worlds apart. One feels open, functional, bright, and easy to live in. The other feels cramped, awkward, choppy, and dated. That changes value. Condition, huge, probably bigger than most agents actually realize. Kitchens, bathrooms, flooring, painting, windows, roof, lighting, trim, basement finishes, general care. Move-in ready homes create stronger emotional responses. Homes that feel like work shrink the buyer pool and force buyers into mental math on what it's going to cost to repair. This affects price. Other features like garage, finished basement, ensuite, home office, second floor laundry, legal suite, walkout basement, no rear neighbors. But here's the key. Features matter differently in different product type and different markets. See, a second parking spot might be huge in one condo building, but barely matter in another. A finished basement may matter a lot to a suburban family buyer and much less to a downsizer. So you can't just count features. You have to interpret the market. What's the buyer appeal? This one is massively underrated. How broad is the buyer pool for this home? Does it appeal to a lot of people? Or does it only appeal to a narrower segment? Broad appeal supports stronger pricing. Niche appeal can reduce it. That's reality. And the longer you do this, the more obvious this becomes. I can walk through homes right now and tell you pretty quickly whether the average buyer is going to lean in or start mentally subtracting. That skill comes from reps, not years in the business, but reps. I mean, CMAs you've gone on. So the more appointments you go on, the more at-bats you have, the more repetitions you have, the quicker you learn. But even if you're new, start asking this every time you're using a comparison property and trying to see if you should actually put it in your CMA. Which home would the average buyer prefer? That question will sharpen your pricing fast. Now, let's talk adjustments. This is where agents either get overwhelmed or start pretending they're more precise than they are. They say things like, well, a kitchen adds $13,250. An ensuite is worth $6,700. That lot premium is worth $8,900. Based on what? Usually nothing solid. So here's the better approach. Instead of forcing fake precisions, start with relative positioning. Ask, is this comp inferior, similar, or superior to the subject? Then ask, how much is the difference matter in this market? That is a far better way to think of it. Here's an example. If one comp sold for $760,000 and it is clearly inferior because it has an older kitchen, unfinished basement, and a worse lot position, then the subject property should probably trade above that. If another comp sold for $805,000 and it's clearly superior because it has more renovations, shows better, and sits on a stronger lot, then the subject property likely trades below that. Now you have built a bracket, and this is real pricing, not fake math, not guesswork, supported ranking. And that is a lot closer to how the best listing agents actually think. Now that you have filtered the comps and compared the key value drivers, your next job is to build a range. Not a giant fuzzy range, a useful range. Something like, I think the home realistically fits between $735,000 and $765,000 based on the strongest recent solds, current active competition, and the homes that are under conditional status right now. That's the real answer. And I want all agents to hear this. You do not need to force one perfect number out early. Like, the death of a listing agent is to give an exact number because you don't know that. An appraiser doesn't even know that. Now, an appraiser is trained to give an actual number for bank purposes, lending purposes, financing, and all that. You're not an appraiser. You're a licensed realtor called in to sell a property for top value in today's market. You don't know exactly what it's going to sell for. And I say it's the death of the listing agent because if you give your seller an exact number, and if it does not sell for that exact number, you will never hear the end of it. The safest way is do your homework and give a range, a small range at what you think it will sell for based upon all of this analysis. This is how professionals think because the CMA gives you a probable value range. The listing strategy determines where you launch inside of that. Those are two different decisions. And when you explain clearly to a seller, you sound sharp, you sound calm, you sound evidence-based, and you sound like someone worth trusting. Once you have the range, there are usually 3 ways to position the home. Number 1, price aggressively. This means pricing on the sharper end of the range to create urgency, increase showings, get eyeballs on the property. This can work really well when homes show beautifully, buyer demand is healthy, and you're in a seller's market. Number 2, price at fair market value. This is the cleanest, most defensible option in the most normal market. Your price where the evidence says the home should trade. This tends to create the least confusion and the strongest credibility. This is where I price most of my property. And right now in my market, I'm in a balanced market, so this is exactly where I price. Third option, price aspirationally. This means testing the upper edge, even slightly above the range. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it burns time. It may make sense if inventory is very tight or the property has something genuinely rare. But let me be blunt here. A lot of agents use this strategy for the wrong reason. Not because the market supports it, but because they want the listing. This is the one of the oldest traps in the business. They buy the listing. So they inflate a number to make a seller feel great. They can't sell value. They can't sell what they're actually going to do to sell a property. So they come into the seller and give them some inflated number like $150,000 higher than it should sell for just to get the listing. Then they try and work away on price reduction, price reduction, price reduction. I don't believe in this one bit. I don't feel there's any integrity behind it because you're lying to your client. And then you're going to spend the next 60 or 90 days trying to reduce them, trying to reduce them, trying to reduce them. I've seen that movie 1,000 times. Winning a listing at the wrong price is not winning. It's just a delayed problem. And if you're new or even a seasoned agent, decide early on what kind of agent you want to be. The one who tells a seller what they want to hear or the one who tells them what they need to know, because only one of those careers compounds. What to say when the seller asks, "So what's it worth?" Well, this is where a lot of agents really get shaky. So let me give you the clean way to handle it. You can say, based upon the current competition, the strongest recent solds, and how your home compares on condition, layout, and buyer appeal, I believe likely range of value is between X and Y. My exact pricing recommendation depends on how we want to position the property strategically within that range. Done. That's strong, sounds professional, and doesn't sound like you're hiding anything. It sounds like you know what you're doing. And if you have not seen the home yet, you can say, based upon the information available so far, I believe the likely range is here. Once I have seen the home in person and compared it more precisely to the strongest competition properties, I will narrow it down into my final recommendation. See, that's not weakness. That's discipline, and that's honesty. And sellers respect disciplined agents more than agents trying to perform certainty on something they've never even seen. See, real confidence is not acting sure on everything. Real confidence is being clear about what the evidence supports. So how do you present CMAs so it helps you win the listing? Let's talk about the presentation, because a CMA is not just about pricing. It's about the most important trust building tool you have. If you present it properly, the seller walks away thinking, this person understands the market. This person knows the competition. This person has a strategy and we are going to win. That's what you want. So you not just dump a giant printout or an email of like a PDF full of MLS pages and hope they figure it out. You need to walk them through the logic. Show them the most relevant active listings and how they compare to it. Show them the solds. Show them where the subject property is stronger than the competition. Show them where we're weaker. Show them the range. Then explain the strategy. This is the job. See, sellers don't need 50 pages of clutter. They need clarity. They want to know, how did you get there? What are we up against? What happens if we overprice? What happens if we price right? That conversation wins more listings than fancy marketing folders ever will. In my experience, especially working with hundreds of sellers who are smart, involved, and already watching the market closely, they do not hire an agent with the thickest CMA. They hire the agent who makes the price make sense. What I'm seeing a lot of agents miss, well, they give the practical reality check from the field. What I'm seeing right now in the marketplace where a lot of agents are messing up the CMAs is they're often sellers are emotionally anchored to the wrong information. They're anchored to neighborhood sales, the highest comp, a number they saw online or what their neighbor said, or other agents told them to win the meeting. See, none of these things determine value. The market does. And if you do not control the conversation early, you lose leverage fast. Another thing I see agents miss all the time is they underweigh the competition. They spend too much time explaining what is sold and not enough time explaining what buyers can choose today in the open market. That's a mistake because pricing is not just historical. It's about positioning. And a third thing I see is they do not always appreciate how quickly presentation and condition can change the pricing conversation. I can tell you from working with sellers for decades, the difference between clean, neutral, prepared, and dated, cluttered, and needs work is not small. It changes who shows up. It changes how the buyers feel. It changes how hard they push on price and negotiate. That's real. And if you're a new agent or even a seasoned agent, do not reduce a CMA to a spreadsheet logic. Pricing lives in the overlap of data, the product, the buyer psychology. That's the truth. So to round this all out for you, the biggest CMA mistakes to avoid, and what I'm seeing agents do all the time, is they're using bad geography. They're mixing in weak or irrelevant comps. They're only looking at solds and ignoring actives. They're ignoring the condition, the layout, and using stale sales in a changing market, letting the seller just hope for the number, which is never going to work. They're overweighing the highest comps. They're giving one exact number too early and being too scared to tell the truth. In fear, they lose the listing. That last one is actually the real reason why a lot of agents overprice. They're scared to be honest with the seller. They're scared that the seller will judge them based upon the number they give them. They're scared because they can't back up the number because they haven't done the data or they haven't done the analysis. Because sometimes the hardest part of the CMA is not the analysis, it's being honest. You know, the home is not worth what a seller wants. The buyer dictates the price. The buyer sets the price. The seller decides if they agree with it. It's their home. They don't need to sell it. But in every single transaction, the buyer determines the price. What our goal as listing agents and to help a seller is get in the range for eyeballs on the property and offers to get going. You know, because agents who build long-term trust businesses are usually not the ones who were the most flattering. They're the ones who are the most credible and trustworthy. So how to get good at this fast? You know, if you've been in the business for a while or you're getting going, this skill is transferable fast. You don't need 24 years like me to start getting good at CMAs. You just need more repetitions. Do more of them than necessary. Price homes for your family. Price homes for your neighbors. Price homes for a property you see. Practice makes perfection. Look at professional athletes. How many times do they actually practice for the amount of time they actually compete, right? Think about it. How often are you as a listing agent practicing and refining your CMA skills? It may sound odd, like you're doing all of this work. You don't even have the listing. You're not even talking to a seller, but you could pick a random property on the market, preview it, and then go do a CMA on it. Brilliant. That's just a repetition. And the more work you do up front when you're in the game, it's really going to matter. You're going to be sharper. You're going to understand it more. And you're going to be able to help guide that seller to where they need to be. That's huge. See, that's clarity. And clarity is what sellers pay for. At a deeper level, a CMA is not just about naming a price. It's about learning how to interpret the market. And this is the real skill because you can do that well. You can stop sounding like every other agent who just memorizes the process. You start sounding like an advisor, and that changes everything. It changes how sellers see you. It changes how confidently you speak. It changes how you handle objections and how you can position the listing and make sure you're not overpriced and managing expectation. This is one of those foundational skills in real estate that compounds for years because every good listing agent I know is strong on pricing. Not perfect, but strong. They understand the product, they understand the competition, and they understand the buyer psychology, and they know how to communicate that clearly to the seller. This is what you're building here. So here is the takeaway. If you want to get better at real estate fast, get better at pricing. Not logos, not hype, not pretending to be busy. Get good at pricing. Because when a seller looks at you and asks, "What do you think my home is worth?" that is the moment where your value gets exposed. And if you can walk them through the product, the competition, the strongest comparables, and likely range, and the strategy behind your recommendation, you stop sounding like every other agent. You sound like someone they can trust. This is how listings are won, and this is how overpriced disasters get avoided. That is how you build authority in the real estate business. And after 24 years in the business, working with hundreds of sellers and closing over $500 million in real estate, I can tell you the agents who win consistently are not the flashiest. They're the ones who know how to communicate their value, handle objection, and lead people with confidence. And that is exactly where you should go to next. My next video right here, 6 steps I've used to close over $500 million in sales and how to sell anything to anyone without sounding pushy or script. Check it out right now.